Hey, welcome back to the Startup Operator Weekly Roundup. The Weekly Roundup is the show for people who want to stay updated on major developments of the Indian startup ecosystem. If you're new to the podcast, please do subscribe and share it among folks and operators you think will enjoy the show. Today, Roshan and I will be talking about a trend that we have been seeing over the past few weeks, wherein startups are really investing into their ecosystems and trying to add value. A lot of companies last week had entered into this style of business model, and we have seen a sharp decline in the number of fundraisers that happened last week. But something that happened more recently was the tragic demise of Shane Warne. He had a stellar career. He debuted in 1992. He has played 145 tests for Australia, picked up 708 wickets, and of course is known for his insane leg spin. Roshan, you have been a fan of cricket. What do you think? I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's pretty terrible. As of the Russia war, the stock market tanking, the fuel prices increase, and all of that was not enough. I mean, last week we had the very sad demise of Shane Warne, right? I mean, for those of my generation, I mean, the guy was iconic, 97, 98. The battle between Shane Warne and Sachin is something that's etched in our minds. I also played a bit of cricket, so I kind of understood a little bit of the nuances as well. Shane Warne, irrespective of what situation, would always flight the ball, right? You don't see too many bowlers do that right now, right? Because in a game situation, when you're hit one or two times, you tend to bowl flatter, right? Because it's a mindset thing, really. And Shane Warne was prodigious. Probably the top five cricketers of all time in any ranking, right? Whether it's Wisden or otherwise. So yeah, I mean, pretty tragic. Life is short, YOLO and things to that effect, guys. But yeah, I mean, last week I also caught a podcast on the hydrogen policy that's been announced by the government, and it's a green hydrogen policy, a fairly comprehensive podcast on Bharat Varta. Do check it out. This guy called Rajat Saxeria, who's the CEO of Acme Cleantech, spoke about the various nuances and stuff. And considering that we're pushing for net zero by 2070, this is a key policy measure to that effect. And also, I mean, this is an ecosystem that's going to develop as well. So there are plenty of opportunities in this ecosystem going further. So do check that out.
So the biggest headlines from last week was that Hero Motocorp announced that they'll launch its first electric vehicle on 1st of July. And this will come under the brand name Vida. And deliveries for this will be starting later this year. July 1st also marks the birth anniversary of Dr. Brij Mohan Lal, who is the chairman emeritus of Hero Motocorp. And but there's an interesting story behind why they choose to go for its new branding, right? It's due to the existence of Hero Electric brand, which had resulted in a legal battle over its ownership. But this is a really big move, right? Hero Motocorp is the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer, right? And of course, removing gasoline-based two-wheelers off-road in India will be a huge step in curbing pollution, right? And this will be a major jig in the ecosystem as well. What do you think about it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, see, we put out the episode on the EV ecosystem, right, or the clean mobility ecosystem last week, with Shreya Shibulal of Micelio. And this is something that he said, which is that all of the incumbents will either build, invest, or acquire, or do all of the above, right? And then that's what we're seeing. I mean, Hero invested, I think, 420 crores in Ather in January of this year, and they own about 34% there. And they're also, I mean, coming out with their own electric brand right now. Hero Electric is, I think it was started in 2007, and Naveen Munjal, who's the CEO, has dabbled in electric vehicles since 2001 itself, and they have plenty of learnings associated with that, right? I mean, so he has been keeping a close watch on this ecosystem for something like 20 years, right? It's definitely something that will spur innovation, right? We've always said that the cost of innovation in this ecosystem is very, very high at this point of time, right? Everyone's building everything, and the larger players, once they get involved, I think the ecosystem will get a little more streamlined. Cost of innovation will come down, and the demand also will pick up because distribution is with the larger guys, right? I mean, all said and done, they've been selling for like 20, 30 years in this market, and so the distribution is very, very well entrenched. So really, I mean, for the adoption to pick up and so on, I mean, incumbents play a huge role, and Hero is kind of leading the way. I mean, who knows, TVS will follow, right? I mean, TVS also has invested in Ultraviolet, for example, right? Maybe we're going to see a TVS electric vehicle on the road shortly, right? Because see, it's hard because for the incumbents, it's an innovator's dilemma, right? I mean, they have something that's working, they have something that's gaining market share, and for them to step out and do something different requires thinking out of the box. And so, yeah, I mean, plenty of good news on the EV ecosystem front.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, right, the incumbents, I think Bajaj Auto has also said that they'll begin deliveries of its battery scooter Chetak by the end of this month. And in addition to that, it's also investing $40 million to build an annual capacity of 500,000 EVs in its new plant. But, as you mentioned, right, like, why should they move away from their existing products and stuff? One way which companies are doing it is by setting up, separate funds to back new age entrepreneurs. For example, Hero Motocorp has set up $100 million global fund to help entrepreneurs who are following ESG, that is environmental, social, and governance solutions. And we have seen a lot of other startups follow suit. So for example, Ninja Cart has set up a $25 million agri seed fund to support startups in the agri-tech space. And the process for acquiring the funds will be very simple. The startup will have two calls. The first will be for screening and the second for evaluation. And, from the time you submit the form, it will just take 2 days to know whether you're getting additional funding and stuff like that. In fact, and all of these things, right, we have been seeing come into mainstream media with Shark Tank. I don't know if you remember, there was this episode of Jugadu Kamlesh, right, where he came in and he had his own design for the wheelbarrow solving for fertilization, right? And Piyush Bansal just invested in him directly. So do you think this helps, like touch models, right, helps in diversifying a startup's revenue stream, or it's actually setting up, companies in the agri-tech space for acquisitions later on?
No, it helps for sure, right? I mean, because you can't build all of your solutions yourself, right? It may not be strategically viable. Rather, I mean, create a fund, and we will talk about other startups as well that have done this well. Create a fund and incubate these different solutions, and maybe integrate and acquire these people later on the line, right? I mean, why not? So Ninja Cart, for example, they operate in this whole fresh produce supply chain, and there are lots of problems to solve in this, right? There's huge number of intermediaries, right? There's a lot of food wastage and wastage at every stage, right? From assembling, transporting, storing, processing, packaging, distributing, etc. And optimizing all these various levers in the value chain is a tremendous task. I mean, it's a lot of things coming together, and maybe it makes sense for them to look at these independent startups or solutions and kind of bring them into their ecosystem, right? And we've spoken about the agri laws, for example. Hopefully, whenever it gets a little more liberal, will spur a lot of innovation on the agri front, right? So yeah, it's definitely a good thing, I would say.
Right. Even IndiaMart, right? We had spoken at length about IndiaMart in one of our earlier rounds, how without raising any funds, they did IPO. They also have a lot of long-term strategies for investing into startups. Last week, they invested 17.01 crore rupees in a SaaS-based HR platform called Zimeo. And Zimeo offers HR management. It allows partners for IndiaMart to manage their HR processes as well as employee benefits, right? And along with Zimeo in the past, IndiaMart has invested in a lot of companies, right? Think about Busy or M1 Exchange, Eascom, FleetX, Bizom, Shipway. And again, we're seeing this continue, right? Investing into companies that may not be directly related to you, but actually helps your partners grow, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's like a proper fund, right? I mean, all of those companies that you mentioned, obviously, they do very different things. Zimeo, for example, is in the HR and payroll software space, right? They manage everything from recruitment, onboarding, payroll management, performance, time management, so on and so forth, benefits, and so on. And this is an evergreen solution, right? I mean, there was something like this 20 years back. There's going to be something like this, maybe 100 years from now as well, right? So Zimeo has been doing fairly well. They have 500 plus customers, and the product starts at as low as 50 rupees per user per month, and goes up, all the way to like 200, 250 as well, right? They have enterprise plans and so on and so forth. Perhaps, I mean, IndiaMart is itself using Zimeo for its 3,000 employees, right? So this is a case of a customer becoming an investor, maybe.
Yeah. But it's not only startups that have been investing in companies. Last week, we also saw a handful of announcements from new and existing venture capital houses. Accel, which established its first fund in India in 2005, has just launched its seventh fund for the country. The new $650 million fund will be used to invest across India and Southeast Asia, and taking the commitment to the region to over $2 billion. The current portfolio value is more than 100 billion. Apart from Accel, seasoned investor Radhesh Kanumury also announced his new fund, which is called Suvan Ventures, and aims to raise about $10 to $15 million investments in SaaS companies. It's an early stage B2B Indian cross-border fund, and they're looking to make 20 to 25 investments in time. Kanumury was the founding member and managing partner of Arca Venture Labs. But let's talk about Accel a little bit, right? If you look at its portfolio, it has the likes of Flipkart, Freshworks, Accel, Swiggy, and even Mensa, right? But when they launched this new fund, they said that they're going to more incline towards enterprise and Web3 technologies, right? Because this is where they think India will have a major market share in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. Accel has one of the most enviable portfolios of startups, right? Freshworks, ChargeBee, Acco, Blackbuck, Browser Stack, CultFit, Swiggy, Vedantu, Zetwork. I mean, I probably mentioned more than a few unicorns there as well, right? So pretty amazing. And Accel has had a lot of success on the SaaS side of things, right? With Freshworks, ChargeBee, Browser Stack, and so on. So yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense for them to double down on that and focus on enterprise tech. Web3 is the present and the future, I suppose, right? And it's a bet on India capturing that ecosystem. Look, we've spoken about the funds raising funds themselves, right? I mean, we spoke about, for example, Sequoia trying to raise a $1.3 billion fund, right? Or rather more than that, I think, probably a $2 billion fund for India and Southeast Asia. And aside from the global macro reasons, right, Indian startups have done really, really well. I mean, so what was it, like 44 unicorns last year? We have about 8 or 9 this year already. And so, I think there's a lot more money that's going to come into the ecosystem. And Accel has been an early champion of the Indian ecosystem, right? I mean, they were perhaps the first institutional investor in Flipkart. So yeah, I mean, they also started this thing called Accel Atoms, where they're investing in very, very early stage startups, right? I think it's probably a 100K check, and encouraging people to kind of work on their ideas and so on. So we had Prayank Swaroop, who's a partner at Accel, sometime last year on the podcast. Do check it out. I mean, he spoke about their investing thesis and how they think about companies and so on and so forth. That's a very nice episode. Do check it out. But yeah, good luck to the Accel team.
So on the EdTech front, last week, Scalar has acquired online learning platform Applied Roots for a total of $50 million. And this acquisition will be used to strengthen its data science, AI, and machine learning offerings. This is the third acquisition for Scalar after acquiring Coding Minutes and Coding Elements in 2021. And a team of about 57 full-time employees will be joining Scalar as part of the acquisition. This reminds me, it has really been quite some time that we haven't covered Byju's. But nonetheless, there's still a lot of consolidation happening in EdTech space. You think this will continue?
I had to read that amount, that total number twice to be really sure, right? I mean, $50 million is amazing confidence, right? Because Scalar raised, a Series B of 55 million only recently, I think, with Lightrock and Sequoia Capital and Tiger, right? So yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's obviously not all cash, but still, I mean, it shows a lot of confidence. We had Abhimanyu of Scalar on the podcast some time back, and he spoke about how Scalar can be the university of the future, right? And they've been doing some fantastic work. Seriously, there is like a skill shortage in terms of good engineers, and this is another one of those perennial problems, evergreen problems to work on. And Scalar has done fantastically well. I mean, their students are being hired by some of the top product and R&D companies in India and elsewhere, right? So I think for all effective purposes, this is the education of the present and the future, And I tweeted maybe like 3 or 4 years back, I still remember, that if you're an AI and ML person, you should just bandy together 3 or 4 of your friends and start something, something of a project, right? At the very least, you will get acqui-hired, which is likely what this is as well, right? I mean, aside from all of the stuff on the product and distribution side of things, which I'm sure that, Applied Roots has, it's also an acqui-hire for the 6 founders who are going to come on board, right? Because today, finding people who are great at AI ML is next to impossible, right? And organizations have to do all of these things. Seems like a very organic sort of a fit, right? So Applied Roots will continue its AI ML sort of a course curriculum and stuff. So yeah, definitely great.
Yep. So in an otherwise muted week of startup funding, audio over-the-top platform Pocketfm secured the largest round with a $22.4 million in Series B funding. This round was led by Lightspeed, which also a participation of Times Group and the first time invested in the company Tangled Venture. Pocketfm was started in 2018 has now become one of the largest OTT platforms in India with over 100,000 hours of long-form content. Which came into prominence last year with the ban of Chinese apps. They have secured additional $10 million in funding in 2 different trenches. They raised funding from a couple of investors, including Capia Venture Partner, Ravi Modi Family Trust, Ashni Grover, and I think there are 20 other folks in the list. Some institutional investors such as Tiger Global, Accel, and Bloom had invested in the Series B earlier last year. But Coup kind of really died down, right? It came into the prominence so much, but now, I mean, at least I'm not hearing about it much.
I mean, I think all of the Twitter ban and stuff is when, I mean, they peaked, right? But they still have about 15 million plus users, right? Compared to Twitter, which has probably 25 to 30 million. And they're also looking at international markets: Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines. In fact, I mean, during the Twitter ban in Nigeria, they had launched Coup there as well. I'm not sure if they've, mined that market further. And look, I mean, it's an existing behavior anyway, right? People love to talk or tweet. And Coup is offering that, offering that in the various different languages, right? Hindi, Telugu, Bengali, and so on and so forth. So they're really building for this Bharat user. And plenty of celebs and so on are on Coup. Anupam Kher, Virat Kohli, and plenty of the ministers also, Indian ministers, are on Coup itself. So Pocketfm is an interesting story. I mean, they have 20 million plus users, and audio content is growing. There were some stats that the Pocketfm founder had shared that they're doing 1 billion plus monthly listening minutes every month, right? And users are spending on average 110 minutes daily on Pocketfm, which is crazy. Those are crazy numbers. And very promising as well, considering that we are producing a lot of audio content. So Pocketfm produces storybooks, self-help, crime, horror, romance, religion, etc. I mean, you'll find a bunch of these different things, right? I mean, they have local language content on all of these different themes. They have about 100,000 hours of exclusive audio programming. And really what they're doing is enabling creators reach out to an audience and monetize their talent, right? Building a global storytelling community in that sense. So one of their shows, Yakshini, had, it's a paranormal horror show. It had 50 million plays, and it's written by this guy called Anand Usha Borkar, who's actually a mechanical engineering grad, wanted to pursue writing as a profession, but wasn't able to really find success in the publishing market, and so on. In fact, he had to self-publish his own book, apparently. right? And now this guy has come with this Yakshini show, which is hugely popular. 50 million is a crazy, crazy number. And it's being translated into different languages like Telugu and so on, right? So there's a huge discovery problem for sure that Pocket FM solves for, right? For artists and storytellers, it's very difficult to find these people, and it's difficult for them to reach out to their fan base as well, right? So this is a fantastic problem to solve, very meaty problem to solve. We've spoken to Vinay of Stage, Jani of Local, Farid of ShareChat, and plenty of others on this whole Bharat user, right? And building for this Bharat user, considering that 900 million people are going to come online, by 2025 or so, is going to be hugely profitable, because one thing is that these folks also pay. I mean, it's not just that they're just consuming all of this stuff passively, right? In fact, Pocket FM itself last year, I think their annual revenue run rate was around $1.3 million or something, and this was just very shortly after they had launched their monetization experience. So yeah, we had spoken to Bisu of Kuku FM way back, I think in 2020 itself, and that's a good podcast to kind of understand this entire audio space itself, and how to build for the Bharat user. So do check it out.
I think we also had Rajneet Pratap of Pratilipi, right? He also gave some interesting insights on how this entire space is, growing. Ranjit, yes. But talking about Pratilipi, Roshan, it's just let's move on to the talk of town section, right? You clearly put out an interesting tweet, so why don't you take us through that? You wrote, "Good leaders quit, then chaos ensues. Great leader quit, then nothing changes. The difference is that great leaders create a culture and an institution that will outlast them."
Well, I was thinking about what leaders do, right? And leaders don't just manage things, don't just draft processes and enable people and so on and so forth. All of those things are table stakes, right? That's something that they have to do anyway. What great leaders do is hire great people and build a culture of excellence, and that's really what great people do. And that is something that is person independent, right? I mean, that should continue irrespective of whether somebody is there or not. And I see many instances of this. For instance, right? I was talking to someone from the road transport and National Highways Ministry, for instance, and he was talking about how Mr. Gadkari, who's the minister, has built this culture of hustle and of taking decisions, proactively, because government bureaucracy. I mean, it's so famous that they just sit on their butts, right? I mean, they don't do much. In fact, I mean, there's no incentive to actually act. But the road transport ministry has been phenomenal, right? I mean, if you look at the amount of road that we've built over the last 7-8 years, it's tripled. In fact, I mean, from something like 11 kilometers a day to around 38 kilometers a day right now, which is phenomenal. And that kind of stuff doesn't happen, when it is limited by personalities and people. Of course, I mean, you need those people to kind of spur innovation and drive that culture. But this is stuff that kind of lives on. And if it can happen in something as complex as the Indian government, right? I mean, it can definitely happen in a startup, right? Which is like of 25, 30 people or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's really where I was coming from.
Right. Cool. Let's move on to the episode that we'll be putting out. The conversation for next week, right? I think I've already spoken with Malika Sadani, who is the founder and CEO of the Moms Co, right? And she has built a brilliant brand operating in the D2C space. And something which I'm personally looking forward to will be a conversation with Kirti Jangra, who is the co-founder and CEO of Animal, right? Animal was conceptualized in 2019 as part of an internal hackathon at Pratilipi, right? And the problem they're solving, I'm sure not something which I can relate to, but if you go into the tier 2, tier 3 states, cities of UP and North India, I'm sure this is adding a lot of value, right? So, I mean, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so the conversation with Malika was amazing, really, really amazing. We don't have a lot of D2C founders, definitely not someone from the personal care and beauty space anyway. right? So it was really nice to understand how they kind of built this company, and they had a fantastic outcome as well, right? They got acquired for 500 crores by the MyGlam Group just last year. And yeah, it's not a bits and bytes business. It's a, atoms and molecules business. So you're actually moving, moving things, moving physical things, right? So really scaling this is a heck of a challenge. What I really liked about Malika is the way she did her consumer research, right? All of us have ideas for sure, right? But going from idea to product to company is a whole other matter, right? And two things separate the real entrepreneurs from the rest. One is the conviction to take the plunge, and the second is really validating this problem solution and figuring out what is the right fit for that, right? And Malika spoke to something like 200 moms, in terms of validating her thesis, right? And then building this community out and so on. So Malika and Mohit are the founders, the husband and wife, and they used to do a lot of these deliveries themselves. So it's a very inspiring story. I mean, it's a story that it tells you that basically anybody can do this with the right sort of sincerity, ambition, hustle, and so on. So yeah, definitely check out that episode. Malika was amazing. I'm also really, really excited to talk to Kirti of Animal. I think it's such a fabulous idea. It's one of those things, right? I mean, it's such a huge thing in the villages and so on. Literally every family that I know in the village has, has cattle and livestock and so on. I mean, it's a key part of village life anyway, right? And it's one of those markets, or rather it's one of those spaces and domains which is so asymmetric in terms of information, right? I mean, it's the news and the information very, very local, works and so on and so forth. And yeah, they're building in this amazing space. Also, I think she was on the second episode of She Builds, which is the show that we recommended last podcast. Definitely do check out those stories on She Builds. Fantastic women entrepreneurs. And considering that next week is, or rather this week is Women's Day, right? 8th is International Women's Day. We have two women entrepreneurs on the podcast, right? Which is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, two very, very good episodes coming up next week. If you guys have any suggestions for others that we should talk to, I mean, please do recommend them on our social media and so on. I think there's also a question on chat, Gunjan. You want to take that up?
Yeah, I think this is asked by Bhuvnesh Mittal. He's asking, what do you think if they're going to take R&D from Ather Energy? I think this is part of the Hero Motocorp conversation we are having.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, but I would assume that a company of the stature of Hero will obviously have its own product and R&D units, right? I mean, so they've been in the game long enough anyway. And this is always something that people suspect, that, when a larger company works with a startup, right? I mean, they kind of think of this Apple and Xerox moment where, where people just steal. It doesn't always happen, right? There will definitely be some cross-pollination of ideas for sure. There will be collaboration and so on. But yeah, I think it will be positive, right? I mean, so Hero, as we mentioned, owns, I think 35% of Ather. So it's in both of their self-interest to promote their products, right? So yeah, that's that. Sorry, I mean, that was like a non-answer answer, but that's all I have.
All right. So that brings us to the end of this week's roundup. Thanks, Roshan, for all the insights. Folks who tuned in, thanks a lot for being with us till the end. If you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with your operator friends in your network. Along with that, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We are at Operator Startup on Twitter and the Startup Operator on LinkedIn. Apart from that, if you check the description below, you'll also find a WhatsApp link which shares regular updates right into your WhatsApp inbox, and do subscribe to that.
Yeah, and that community is kind of growing, right? I mean, we just started this on a whim a couple of months back, in fact. Yeah, we have a growing number of subscribers on that. I'm also thinking of adding some more content, right? We used to do this thing called Bytes earlier. the short 2-minute startup wisdom kind of thing, right? We might start doing that if this community really takes off. So yeah, subscribe to us on WhatsApp for all the good stuff.
All right. So yeah, thanks, Roshan. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again next